The size of a building depends on the number of individual blocks that make up that building. So if a building is huge, then it consists of quite a number of blocks. On the other hand, if you have a small building, the blocks are few. In the same way, our ability to communicate effectively to a degree depends upon our vocabulary stock. If we have few words, it will be difficult for us to express our thoughts very well. But if you have a huge vocabulary stock, we can speak well, articulate very well. Our topic for discussion today is on vocabulary building, or building vocabulary, any which way you like it. And we can see that reading is the most reliable way of expanding one's vocabulary. There are other ways, like listening carefully as people speak, but to consciously acquire vocabulary, we have to cultivate the desire, the love for reading. So we're going to go right into how we can build our vocabulary by focusing on reading. The question is, we have to read extensively. We read things like history, fiction, non-fiction journals, also known as periodicals, and we can read literature like prose, drama, and poetry. The beautiful thing is that as we read and acquire more vocabulary, we also learn, expand our horizon, and get to know the world in which we live. And of course, every knowledge ultimately leads to self knowledge. And by expanding our vocabulary, we also grow in knowledge and get to know the world very well. So, for example, what do we learn when we read history? History can help us to analyze past events and predict the future. So we learn about various cultures and collective human behavior. So whenever you read historical stories, you get to know the world, you get to know things that happened in the past. And obviously, as you get to know these things, you get to know yourself because every knowledge ultimately is self knowledge. And history gives you identity. You know who you are, where you come from, and likely where you're going. And of course, you learn from past mistakes. You learn from past mistakes so you do not repeat them. What about fiction and nonfiction? Of course, you learn new words and expressions, which is the main reason acquiring vocabulary. You also expand your imagination and creativity because fiction is full of creativity. And then you explore the world. So within the pages of a novel, you can travel around the world. Within the pages of a novel, you can get into people's minds, smell things, touch things, walk on areas you would never imagine to have gone by yourself. And then you'll be able to enlarge your viewpoint of things. You know, they say travel opens our minds up. But one of the ways that we can travel actually is through the pages of a book. So if you read fiction a lot, you'll be able to expand your knowledge of the world. And it will be just like you're traveling because you acquire knowledge the same way as though you are meeting people physically from different part of the world and experiencing different cultures and the way people live and do their things. So apart from vocabulary building, you're going to learn these things if you read fiction and nonfiction. Now, some of the benefits of reading journals, also known and literature. But journals, for example, also called periodicals, will keep us up to date, will give us the state of the art of things. So you read a journal of last year, information can be updated in the journal of this year or this month, whatever the case is. We are kept up to date if we read journals. If you read literature, either drama, prose, or poetry, you can be entertained. So, one of the things you get from that, apart from vocabulary acquisition, is entertainment. And of course, it doesn't mean always laughter. If you entertain yourself, it goes beyond laughter. Entertainment has to do with the stirring of your emotion. It can be laughter, it can be anger, it can be joy, it can be sadness, it can be a connection with the rest of the world. In whatever way, once your emotion is stirred, you are entertained. Literature can give you that avenue to entertain yourself apart from acquiring vocabulary. It also expands your imagination. And of course, literature, fiction is one form of literature. So as you read and people are able to stretch their minds to get into areas that humans cannot get into, to do things that humans are unable to do, then our imagination and creativity can be stretched and they will be able to enjoy that. Besides, reading literature can make us critical thinkers because it takes a lot of mental energy to be able to create. And this ability to create on the part of writers can help you to be able to stretch your mental faculty to be able to understand things more deeply than you ever will be able to do on your own. So, definitely, reading literature opens our minds and can help us to become critical thinkers. If you read literature on investigation, for example, it takes a lot of mental energy to engage in investigations. And as you read and get into the mind of the investigator, get into the minds of the criminals that are investigated, no doubt your mind gets critical in terms of analyzing things. And of course, you are educated. You learn something new. And education is supposed to transform our lives. If you learn something new, it affects the way you view the world, all through the avenues of reading. You will get your vocabulary, you would learn other things as well. Then what do you need to do? You keep a dictionary and a thesaurus handy. Fortunately for us these days, you can keep just a mobile phone, a smartphone, and you can download as many dictionaries as you want and as many thesauruses as you want. So these are important to be able to build upon your vocabulary. What do? You look up new words in a good dictionary. Remember, in a good dictionary. So you check their pronunciation, the class or the part of speech of the word, the usage, examples, and other overlapping words such as synonyms and antonyms. So a single word, you're going to check the pronunciation, the class, the part of speech. Is it a noun, a verb, an adjective, whatever? You're going to learn other overlapping words, other words that share similar meaning with the word or words opposite in meaning. So your vocabulary is going to be expanded if you keep a good dictionary. And you need to keep a personal journal. A personal journal is good for personal reference so that you put your words in it, some examples, sentences, how you want to use them. That's fine. The benefits of keeping a journal, self-reflection. You'll be able to think about things because you're beginning to be a goal-oriented person. Once you put down things you learn and you can look upon them again and reflect about how you have grown over the years, over the days as you begin to take vocabulary building as something you want to do. You have a sense of responsibility. And that could be a foundation for autobiography one day or someone's biography. And also, of course, you are exercising writing skills if you keep a personal journal. Then think of it, a word a day, remember that. The cliche, little drops of water make a mighty ocean, is also true in the case of vocabulary building. So you can learn a word a day. And if you do that, what do? You learn the pronunciation, as we talked about, you learn the class of the word, you learn the spelling. These days, because of technology and the mobile phones and shorthands, many of us find it difficult to spell words correctly. So we need to learn the proper spelling of the words and their usage as well, and also the history behind the words, if possible. Now, if a single word provides all these avenues of learning, like if you multiply all these avenues, pronunciation, class of the words, spelling, usage, etymology, history of the words, you can imagine if you learn a word a day, the number of information that you can, the amount of information that you can get from from looking for words, from reading, or forgetting a word a day. Now, let's take, for example, the word curfew. If you've come across this word for the first time, it's curfew. You know what curfew is? An emergency time when no one at particular time is given for everybody to be at home, not to step out because of danger. This is normally handed down during wars or civil wars or disruptions of any kind. Now you've learned that curfew is a noun. You learn the pronunciation, curfew, curfew. And then you go on to learn the etymology, the history behind the word that originally curfew was from French, couvre-feu, 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 which literally means cover fire. And then you begin to think, oh, what curfew actually does is to metaphorically cover fire in such a way that during curfews, disruptions, uprisings, or any of these negative things are calmed down. So curfew actually cover fire. You've learned a lot about just a single word, curfew. Yes, that's just one example of what we can get from words. Then it's also good we learn some roots of words, the very roots of words. You know, the root of a plant is very important. If you destroy the root, you destroy the plant. And those into botany can tell the root and even name the plant. In the same way, if you know the root of the word, the origin of the word, it will be easy to at least guess the meaning of the word. So many English words have their roots or say background or origin from Latin, Greek, French, German, Italian, etc. Knowing these roots can be a great boost to telling the meaning of words and in building one's vocabulary. So once you know the root and you know what the root means, there's a possibility of guessing easily. Of course, we would not rely solely on guessing to tell the meaning of word. We have to put in conscious effort apart from guessing. But to a degree, knowing the root of the words would help us to easily guess the meaning. Let's see some example. Some of the roots could either be placed at the beginning of the word called prefix or prefixes, if there are more than one. And if they are placed at the end, they are called suffixes. So prefix is placed at the beginning of a word, a suffix at the end of the word. Once you know the meaning, you can guess. So number one, min is from Latin, for example, and it means small. And then from the word we have minuscule, which means very small in size. So we can see that still the meaning from min is captured in that word over there. The L stands for Latin. Then we have another Latin root in example two, aqua, which means water. And then we have aquarium. And you know what aquarium is? A tank of water where fish are kept as pets. So you can imagine aquarium will have something to do with water. That's a prefix. Then we have theo, another prefix which is Greek, and it means God, from which we have theology, which means the study of religion. Of course, religion has something to do with God, doesn't it? Uh, and then we come to auto, auto. Auto, for example, comes from Greek and means self. So automatic happens on its own, or it is self-driven. Then we have the suffix ism from Greek, which means an act or practice or result of. So we have nationalism, something out of a result of a nation. Yeah, because of nationalism, all of us are trying to be patriotic citizens, for example. So ism has to do with a practice or a result of something. It is easy to guess once you know the root. And today you can just Google the root of many English words and then they will just come up like that on the internet for you to know. And when you see a word that in which you find any of those roots, you can easily tell or guess their meaning at least. So what do you need to do? You need to use the words in conversation. If you do not use the words that you learn, they will evaporate just like that over time. So the best way to learn a language is to speak it. So what do you need to do? Use the language whose vocabulary you intend to build. So if you intend to build the vocabulary of English, speak, write, and read English at all times, or at least on bigger occasions or many times. So we have come to see some of the ways that we can build vocabulary. And you may start and then fail, but never give up. Continue. Over time, it becomes part of your life, and you can easily learn and learn new words and use them and make your conversations a meaningful one. Thank you. Have a wonderful time.